podcast for Black American Spring.
Yep.
I'm Chandler Henderson.
I'm Elijah John. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, I had originally asked him to help me with audio and video, but I'm glad that you're willing to help in any way. I feel like you have to be versatile in any type of media endeavor.
Yeah. It's definitely. I'm glad that I have access to so much through the SOJC because there's a lot that you can watch videos on YouTube. We have access to so much knowledge, but when you don't have your hands on it, it makes it a little bit more difficult to like really do things, to really create things. So it's been good to have access to this podcast studio and the cameras and everything. And I've been learning. Everything's learning, you know?
So you mentioned that you have, so you're from Portland.
I am, yeah.
And you're doing a podcast in Portland?
So I was. At Portland Community College, I had a podcast titled Dismantling the Ivory Tower, which I did with a mentor of mine, Dr. Clifford C. Meeks. And it was run out of the Multicultural Center at PCC, and it was really based on just kind of interviewing and talking with people who are in, BIPOC people who are in the community and creating or doing things that are of interest. It was not like specific to any one topic. We had poets on, we had rappers on, we had football players on, and it was just very much whoever had a story to tell, and we'd bring them on and talk to them,
Yeah, man, podcasting, I feel like, so the Black American Spring, I'd mentioned I was going to tell you my business idea to begin with.
Yeah.
I founded the Black American Spring in 2020 during the protests. I was running around Eugene and Portland as well, oftentimes in Black Bloc, taking photos, and I'd go home and I'd write. The idea between the Black American Spring is similar to like the Arab Spring. It's the Black American Spring is my business that I run things through with the goal of creating wealth, generational wealth for my family.
Right.
That's what the Black American Spring represents.
Okay.
I took all those writings down because they were, when I was writing for the Black American Spring, I had taken 0 college classes. I had taken them 15 years before.
Sure.
So once I, started writing professionally, I was like, these are not.
Not up to your standards at that point.
That's my standards. But the Black American Spring was interesting, right? So I had returned to school at university, or I was at Lane Community College. I think I went back to school when I was 36. So I was about 36 at this time. And I was studying multimedia design and animation.
Okay, cool.
And then that's when I started doing the blog. I really had no intention of going to UO. When I moved to Eugene, I didn't even know UO existed.
Really?
I didn't even know it.
That's like the main thing that people come to Eugene for.
I know. I didn't even know it, And so there was an internship at Eugene Weekly called the Google Fellowship Internship. It was funded by Google, and Google would pay you to write for Eugene Weekly.
Okay.
And I applied for that, and I got it because of the Black American Spring. And it was during that time that I applied to UO. So I didn't plan on being a journalist.
Sure.
But it's always been like my journalism. My entire life philosophy, at least in this era of my life, is to try to be involved with community.
Yeah.
So the Black American Spring is that vehicle. It sounds like the Ivory Tower is a similar.
It was, yeah. Definitely, like the idea, the entire the name basis of dismantling the Ivory Tower is not everybody has the money to go to college. Not everybody has the means, and yet there's so much knowledge, so many people, so much to see and do and speak about within these higher education spaces. But we gatekeep them basically, and the idea is, we have all the ivory towers of these, institutions, PWI or otherwise, that, people just don't have access to. And the idea is just dismantle that, disperse.
So, we're obviously in an American decline.
Yes, we are.
And I obviously see the attempted attacks on academia.
Yeah.
However, each state has their own individual power. And this country is so large, each state is almost like its own country.
Yeah.
Do you think that Oregon will become like a harbor state for intellectuals?
Yeah, I think the West Coast in general is going to be that because, beyond our history here that is, somewhat removed from the history of the East Coast, we have a lot of hubs. You have LA, you have Portland, you have Seattle that are primarily liberal, but also very very, very academia and education focused in a way that I think, even hubs like New York, right? I think because there's so many people, but also because it's just a different culture, it's a different place. I don't know. I do think that things are going in a direction where, people are going to come here and Seattle and LA, and they're going to view that as the safe space, I guess. And I think that could be a good thing, and I think that could also come with some challenges. But yeah, I do think that will be the case. I imagine so.
Are you 23?
21.
Where do you see yourself like in 20 years?
Yeah, people ask me that, and I never have a good answer because, I would say I'm very much a take the scenic route, a little spontaneous, a little go with the flow, and also a little bit like what in Spider-Man, right? MJ says in the most recent one, No Way Home, she says, if you expect disappointment, you'll never be disappointed, right? Or if you have no expectations, and the way I take that is if you have no expectations, then whatever comes, it can either, it won't have to live up to whatever you've made in your head. And so I think for me, I struggle to be like, oh, well, I want to be this and I want to do this because so much has happened in my life where I didn't see myself going to college. I didn't see myself doing stuff like this, podcasting, whatever. But naturally, just through my interests and through the people I've met, opportunities and doors open. And, if you'd asked me 5 years ago where I'd be 5 years from then, I would have come up with something probably completely different and antithetical to everything I am and everything I'm doing right now. So, my personal aspirations are screenwriting for sure. And, that's something I do a lot. Video production of a few different types, but I don't know where that's going to lead me. I don't know.
So, I have the most important question that I'm going to ask you today is who's the best Spider-Man? Oh, yeah. Okay. Like actor or, okay. Well, let's break it down. Right? I'll say actor. Let's start with actor first.
Okay. We'll start with actor, and let's start with Peter Parker just to, right.
Okay.
OG Spider-Man. I grew up watching Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. Spider-Man 1 and 2. Spider-Man 2 came out when I was like 1 year old, right? And then Spider-Man 3 came out when I was in preschool. And that movie was dragged by critics, dragged by everybody. But for my like maybe 4th or 5th birthday, I got a Spider-Man 3 DVD. And I watched that every day for months. I swear. Like I know that movie like the back of my hand. And so because of that, I have sort of a connection to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, to Sam Raimi's style, that, I really do think that my interest in film sort of started with movies like Spider-Man and stuff. So for me, it's always going to be Tobey Maguire. But I'm a big comic guy, right? Like I love reading comics. I do it a lot, but that's not a super comic accurate Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like, especially you can go back to, was it Steve Ditko who did? I think Steve Ditko was the guy who, along with Stan Lee, created Spider-Man.
Yes.
And in the early Spider-Man comics, Peter's an asshole. Like he's an incel, low key. He's very like, nobody likes me and I hate the world and blah blah blah. And it's very very interesting the way that character has evolved over time, you know, because now, especially with Brian Michael Bendis doing Ultimate Spider-Man, kind of changed the way that Spider-Man is, that character Peter Parker is. And so I think like Andrew Garfield, for example, like that's Ultimate Spider-Man. But what's really interesting is Tom Holland's Spider-Man has a lot more in common with Miles Morales from the comics than anything Peter related.
Yeah.
Like even down to his best friend Ned, who's, you know, just Genki from the comics for Miles. So, but really, I like all of them. I do like all of them, but Tobey Maguire will always be my number one. So long rambling just to say Tobey Maguire's my GOAT.
Well, that is the correct answer.
Thank you.
Tobey Maguire's an interesting person because I'm trying to remember the name of the movie. I Googled it and it says Molly's Game is the name of the movie.
Yeah. And it's based on him. Yeah. Yes. So he's known for being a little bit of an asshole, a little bit of a, you know, he's friends with DiCaprio, I think, and they had like they were known in Hollywood circles for being those guys. You know what I mean? And yeah, so that is, it does kind of create like a
That kind of makes me like him because I feel like, you know, nobody, I don't really see any power in being an asshole. You know, I don't think I'm an asshole, but I'm quick to cuss a person out if I need to.
Sure.
And I feel like in Hollywood, particularly with white male actors, there's this superficial level of all the time acting. Think of like Ryan Reynolds and what's the other guy from Boston who married J-Lo?
Oh,
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, yeah.
To me, those are like, I just can't get behind really anything they do.
Yeah, well, it's because, like you said, you know, always acting. They have these personas and masks that are so prevalent. You know, Ryan Reynolds is a great example. Like, no matter what you see him in, he's always exactly the same. And he has this like kind of genuine, nice guy persona that antithetically feels very disingenuous. You know, like I think there is something to be said for someone who kind of just doesn't care, you know? Like Tobey Maguire's been caught on camera many a time being like, fuck off to whoever, you know? And I, you know, I'm not saying I condone that, but I'm also saying I kind of think I'd rather have that than the falsehood of like pretending you're someone you're not, you know?
You know, I would have a really hard time having the cameras follow me around all the time. But I have to say, Ryan Reynolds, one thing, going back to my original college days, in a movie that I'm almost embarrassed about that I used to watch all the time is Van Wilder. I've seen Van Wilder probably like, I don't know, man, at least 200 times.
Damn.
At least.
Damn. That's a movie that I've seen like maybe once. Well, not maybe once. It's a movie I've seen once, and I don't remember almost anything about it. To be fair, I saw it when I was like maybe 12. So,
I mean, it's basically, you know, during that time I was in college. You know, this was when I was like 21, 22. You know, and you know, we had a little party house. You know, we were pretty much, our house was like it was 3 Korean guys, kinda. All three of them had Korean mothers. Okay. One of them had a Mexican father, one of them had a white father, and one of them had a Filipino father, and then myself. And we were pretty much like the anti-frat. We had a little bit of funds, and so like our parties were had just as much, let's say, extracurricular liquids. And you know, we had DJs, we had speakers, we had a nice big house, and so you know, we definitely were kind of like those guys. And so Van Wilder, and I was older as well. I was like 22, and these guys were like normally 19, 20, still older, of course. Sure. But Van Wilder, essentially, it was, you know, looking back, it wouldn't hold up today's standards because there was a stereotypical Indian character, you know, but essentially he was just afraid to graduate. Yeah. because he was like, what the hell am I going to do? And I feel that way in some ways now, but not really. What it really is I look at, so I'm studying journalism. I have been accepted into advertising and brand responsibility and master's in strategic communications. I'm going to do both. And I did that because I've realized that in journalism, I don't want to say I'm conservative because I'm not a conservative, but I'm conservative in some ways. And what scares me is that if you are a black man, appear to be, a hippie or a stoner or whatever it is, but you also have these fiscally conservative views, then those editors will then use you and essentially be like, well, hey, look, this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a big thing to basically kind of use black folks who have certain views as puppets or point to, right? Like, well, no. I'm not saying this necessarily, but they're saying this, and right? So I don't know. To obviously, this is a more extreme example, but like someone like a Candace Owens, you know what I mean? Is someone who basically is put on their platform specifically to spout talking points that might be racist or might be, really horrific, and it's something that it's things that white people, if they did say, would get called out for. But because it's a black person saying it, they can go, well, no. I'm just platforming this black person to say what they want to say. And I happen to agree with a lot of what they're saying, But I think that's dangerous, and I think it's people like Candace Owens who, promote anti-blackness and shit. I mean, look at there was that school shooting recently that was done by a black kid.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And he was a white supremacist.
Yes.
And his whole thing was, I hate being black, I hate myself, calling himself slurs, that kind of thing, like in his manifesto and his journals. And the one black person who he constantly propped up, Candace Owens. Oh, I like Candace Owens though. I like Candace Owens. And you have to wonder why that is, right? Why,
It's scary. So back to Black American Spring, or philosophy. I am under the belief that as Black Americans, and we also have to consider the amount of money coming to the digital space. I think they believe by 2030 it'll be worth $540 million. So I believe Black Americans, if we're in the media space, and this is just a theory, that we're sometimes better off creating our own content, using the skills that we have, linking with advertisers that can help us push our stuff out, and then just having a job doing, like I worked in restaurants for 20 years.
Sure. So
my thought is I'd open up a food cart and then create content revolving around that cart, and then podcasts, and that's where I would make that extra money, because you have a food cart that'll pay your bills, that'll keep you from being homeless,
right?
But it's not going to make you rich,
right?
I feel like those big checks would come from content, from being a content creator, freelance. I got to turn my notifications off.
I should do that also, just in case.
And nobody ever texts me. It's my wife's birthday. I got to say happy birthday, baby.
Oh, damn. Happy birthday. Shout out. What's her name?
Allison,
happy birthday.
Yeah.
Shout out. What was I gonna say? I don't know.
Distracted by the birthday.
Yeah, it's gone. But yeah, no, it's okay. Wait, so for people like you've mentioned Black American Spring a few times. For people who don't know, like, what is that? Can you explain?
So originally it was a blog. This podcast is actually going to be the first post of current days. The reason I took a lot of my stuff down is because I felt like I was an outsider, right?
Sure.
I didn't feel legitimate when I got accepted to grad school. That kind of made me feel like, well, maybe I am legitimate, but also my skills are so much higher that the content that I'm creating is of much higher quality.
Right.
And so it's going to be, a podcast series on Black American Spring.
Cool.
I'll probably do some writing too, but people don't really read.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is true. Yeah. And interestingly, like, because of the rise of like AI and stuff like that, it's so much easier for people to like summarize, right? Like I think reading is, and I don't mean to be like, oh, everybody should read books.
They should,
yes, but also I think there's an air of snobbishness that can come with like, oh, I read books and you don't, and I'm, you know, but I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that, yeah, I do think that reading and, you know, literacy is something that's falling, you know, like people are not engaging as much, and I think a lot of that is due to we are very, very into short form content that dopamine immediately, real quick, and I think I think it's a little bit troublesome. It is.
Just a little bit.
Maybe a lot of it. I mean, I think part of why we are where we are right now with America is at least partially because of that. You know, there's so many factors, but that's one of them.
So, you know, what I hear you say is that there's an illness, an illiteracy illness. So, what is the cure?
You know, in all honesty, I don't know if there is one at this point. I think when you have, you know, we have supercomputers in our pockets all the time that can immediately give us, you know, content and that's the word, really, content. It's not necessarily anything of substance. It can be, of course, like any platform can host and have really important content. You know, really important stuff, but the content mill is always going to supersede someone sitting down and just reading a book, reading an article even, you know, like people just do headlines, you know, like it's a lot easier to skim a headline, maybe read the, you know, like maybe skim it a little bit and scroll through, but like the time that it takes, it just, we have trained our brains to not do that, to not want that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we might be in a spot where it's just a little bit too late.
I have not a theory. I have, so I don't know if I've told you about my research project, 400 Year Nightmare. Essentially, when it started, I started it before I came to school, because it was just like I was researching.
Is this the comic? I've heard a little bit. You talked a little bit about this in NABJ once. Yeah,
so basically what I started doing is researching my family's tree and then looking at what it was that my family did during Reconstruction period and how we survived. And I planned on turning that into a graphic novel. What it has evolved to is similar, but I've been looking at families, not just my family, families even around my families, and really looking at the landmarks and the news, the articles that were written about people during that time. And I think a lot of times people say, well, there's not, you know, Black American history is erased. That's not true. You know, you have to consider during the slave period, Black Americans were insured. They were property. Yeah. So in reality, there's more documents on Black Americans than white Americans. It's just, you know, it's easier for them to tell you that it's not there than for them to give it to you.
Right. And yeah, it's not that it's not there, it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's not available to those who might want to access it. And that's intentional.
But I've been lucky.
Yeah.
You know, I've been able to trace my family as far back as recorded history. You know, and of course there are some you know, people that are written about, I don't even want to say unfairly. For example, my fourth great grandmother was in a plantation in Virginia. The man's name who had the plantation was Captain John Henderson. My name is Chandler Henderson.
Right.
He was captain during the Civil War. He was his first cousin was George Washington's wife.
Interesting.
So that's where they were.
Right.
You know, my fourth great grandmother was when you read all of the historical documents about him, they're like, oh, that was the person he trusted the most. You know, she was a person who, when he died, she kept his gold. You know, of course he had kids, and his kids got all the property, but she was never freed. Who was freed was there are two squires in history. It says that they are father and son, and you know that could have been their relationship. What actually happened was, she had both John Henderson and John Henderson Jr., which is his son, both had kids with this woman.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so they were, you know, so
yeah,
and so and they walked from Virginia to Florida, and their lives are very well documented. Even his death is well documented, and I have many articles about those two men. But what I find most interesting is her, because there is still a lot of documentation about her, but nowhere have I found her name.
Oh, interesting.
You know?
Okay, yeah.
And so that's the thing. And she was from Africa.
Yeah.
I haven't, you know, found the manifest yet, because I have to dig through the archives, and I don't know if you've done any archival.
So, you know, my family's from, or my dad's side of the family is from Africa. My dad is from Africa, you know, so I don't have roots in slavery, and I know where I come from. So like the majority of, you know, my family history is stuff I know for the most part. And so I haven't had to, you know, do that archival stuff. I haven't had to try to look into where do I come from, because I know.
You don't have to. Well, if you do it for anybody else,
right?
That, like, if I, you know, when I'm because of his John Henderson's, and for the record, I've considered changing my name. The reason I haven't changed my name is because I look at Thomas Jefferson's fifth great grandson, the one who writes for the Washington Post.
Was he the one who did the portrait? That yeah.
And he didn't. So I'm like, I'm rocking with you.
Sure.
What does it even matter? Like, at this point, it's
what's
just like,
in a name?
What's in a name? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Captain John Henderson, his documents are at Duke, right? And so when I go to Duke, it's probably a room full of this size of documents.
Right.
It'll take me, I'd have to sit there for a month.
Yeah.
Which I'll do.
Yeah.
But it just takes a lot. It just takes a lot of time. And you know, you have to have that time, and you have to have the resources to pay for a hotel.
Right.
You know, it's not like you're gonna have a refrigerator. Yeah. You know, you gotta eat, you gotta pay for gas, you gotta do laundry. You know, so it just takes a lot of time. But I really enjoy archival work. And there's a couple other stories. My fourth great grandmother, and I'll share these articles with you. I don't always share them with people because you know, it's not everybody's.
You don't have to. Yeah.
So my father died in February. We weren't close.
Okay.
But my fourth great grandmother was a woman named Ida Ward.
Okay.
And she was enslaved in South Carolina, born in the big house, you know. Mm-hmm. When she gained her freedom, Abraham Lincoln came to the plantation. You know, she said she didn't ever get to talk to him because what I'm finding interesting about her is I'm seeing patriarchy manifest itself even from enslaved people. Like, there's an article that she was interviewed in 1950 because she died in 1950, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's such recent history. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they call her Ida Ward, of course, but a lot of times when they talk about her, they talk about her daughter who married John William McCrae the first. My father was John William McCrae the third. At that time, it was just John William McCrae because he didn't have any kids yet. But and it's always like Miss Ward is the mother of Miss John William McCrae. That's kind of how they describe her. And she, along with some other freed slaves, built Congdon Street Baptist Church, which is still the oldest church in Rhode Island, gifted to her by the gentleman Brown. I can't remember what his first name is, but it's a man who created Brown University. Oh, wow. And so the church is on Brown University's grounds. Okay. And it's still to this day my family is like the steward of
Yeah.
this church.
That's interesting.
And so, like, those types, like I said, my father, he always knew this history, but he didn't want to tell me, largely because I'm not even, he's gone, so we're gonna let him rest in whatever peace he has. But so all this stuff is new to me, but it's still very fascinating, and I'm looking at telling that story again, a graphic novel, from the standpoint of the women, because Congdon Street Baptist Church is very well documented,
Right.
because it's the oldest black church in Rhode Island. But the stories are always from the men,
Right.
and I don't particularly like that.
Yeah. I mean, patriarchy manifests. And speaking of, I have been, I guess, like, thinking about and examining patriarchy as a concept more deeply than I have in the past. I was gifted a book called Patriarchy Blues that I've been reading a little bit, and something that I have been coming to terms with personally and understanding is that patriarchy is so pervasive that we are all sort of conditioned to defend it. And the other thing is that patriarchy is harming men. And I think a lot of men don't realize that, or they don't even know what patriarchy actually is, because there's a lot of like, oh, it's a buzzword. It's like the same way woke is just like a word that means nothing now.
Oh man, that one hurts.
Yeah, because that's a word that was for us by us. You know what I mean? And it was a watch out term. It was a stay woke. Like watch your back. Like be careful. Know what's up. Keep your eyes open.
Even back in Reconstruction, it was used. It's
and now it's been sort of hijacked, and everything's woke all the time, and it's awful. But something I've been thinking about is just how we are, conditioned to defend patriarchy as men, but also to to ignore that it exists, but also like while ignoring that it exists, actively defending it, if not consciously, subconsciously. And I think like just about. This is crazy, but like I truly think that just about every societal issue that's like that men face, like we're seeing, rises in male loneliness, in extremism, in like sexlessness, right? Like all of that, and I think that's all genuinely patriarchy. Like that is the cause of you not being able to get laid is not women, it's patriarchy, right? And the reason for that is because we have created we've created a culture essentially that props up men as protectors, as chivalrous, as all of these things that then sort of requires them to like, just bottle it in, right? I read a study from Cambridge that came out very recently, and it basically found that men value relationships, like romantic relationships, more than women do, and they feel worse when like one ends. And it's because women often have support systems, right? Because it's encouraged for you to have, like you have your girls, you know what I'm saying? Men don't have that in a lot of times. And it's because it's actively discouraged. You're not supposed to have those support systems. And you're not, so, a lot of men will come out of a relationship with a chip on their shoulder, and they'll forever be like the scorn from that. They'll just be angry, And I think it's interesting because we have also this idea that like we've propped up this idea that like women are highly like romantic and all this, and like so then I think men also get the wrong idea. They're like, well, what, and I guess what I'm getting at is that I found that study very interesting because it when I was reading sort of some of the comments on it, like, because I saw an article first that was written about the study. And when I was reading the comments on that article, so many people were like, yeah, duh, because women are mean and blah, 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 like, you know, like incel-y shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because even when we are actively like talking about here's the reasons for some of the stuff that, you know, men are facing, right? Men are still going to be like, no, actually, it's women, by the way, which is so weird, I guess.
It's weird. Like my wife, you know, so there's a couple interesting things about my wife. I mean, first, she's white, which I think because she's white, people think I married her because she's white. Not why I married her. I married her because she's beautiful. And, well, actually, I didn't marry her because she's beautiful. I hollered at her because she was beautiful.
Sure. Beautiful inside and out. Like,
but she's
a beautiful human being.
She's a fucking genius.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really what it was, is when I met her, you know, I tend to, so I spent a lot of years in speech therapy. And a lot of times I tend to talk, I don't think that I talk in riddles. A lot of times I'm normally purposeful with what I'm saying.
Right.
So a lot of people who aren't purposeful don't understand what I'm saying. But she always understood what I was saying. So I was like, all right, bet. And we were at a festival, Oregon Country Fair, and she's like quoting James Baldwin. Not too many white women are quoting James Baldwin. So I'm like, all right, there's something deeper here. But one thing that I had to kind of grapple with her is that she is also very traditional woman. She does a lot of crocheting and knitting. She doesn't cook though. I do all the cooking. But she's very...
I've had some of your cooking. Side note, fantastic.
Yeah, I'll bring you some more. I didn't want to bring any frozen stuff, but I'm going to cook tonight.
All good, man.
But yeah, we used to go out to the bar and she'd be like crocheting, and it used to make me nervous because I felt like people were going to look at me like I was like making my woman...
Making her be like a traditional... Yeah. And there's the... what's it called? Like this trend or... trad wife. That's kind of going around. And yeah, I think it's totally fine for people to fall into those traditional gender roles. It just can't be expected of people. That's the only thing. It's like, it's totally normal and well, it's not normal. It's been normalized, right? For people to fall into those traditional gender roles, heteronormative gender roles. But, you know, that's not a bad thing. What is bad is when like it's forced upon someone. But if that's not the case, then, you know, let everybody live. Let everybody do their thing. You know, if a boy likes blue and a girl likes pink, and you know, that doesn't have to be because like it's been forced upon them. Yeah. But it also can be, right? But yeah, no, what I'm hearing from you is, yeah, she just is naturally into those things.
And she does wear a lot of pink.
Sure.
She definitely, if you see her, she's like your very typical, visually bubbly white girl. But when you talk to her, you're like, oh, there's something else here.
Sure.
But yeah, it almost like that was like my, almost like insecurity as a man,
right?
And not wanting to be that. So what is you like? Do you see yourself getting married, having kids? Like, do you want that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. To be honest, I'm like, again, because of who I am as someone who just like, I'm an I don't know kind of guy. You know, I could definitely see it happening, but I'm also like, I could see it not. You know, I think for me personally, I have a lot of issues with marriage. I think partially because, you know, my parents were together and then they were divorced. And I just saw the strife and the pain that put, you know, my mom through specifically. And, you know, I don't know that I would want that for myself, but want that for someone else, you know? And I also think that the idea that we have to sort of have a legally binding contract that says that we love each other, I don't love that. You know, I think if you truly love somebody, there's a lot of ways to let that person know. And, you know, I think I might be the type of person to have to get married, you know, have a wedding, but not do it on paper. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. And, you know, I don't know. We'll kind of have to see what happens.
So we're getting close to the 30-minute mark, so I don't want to go too much longer. But
sure.
I think I'm curious. Let's say we did this again.
Mm-hmm.
What topic is burning that you feel needs to be discussed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I touched on it already, but the patriarchy thing is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially because, you know, if I talk to most of my guy friends about it, and I don't really, like, it's not something I bring up, but if I were to, I can imagine there would be kind of like a, what are you talking about, bro? Like, kind of reaction, you know, like, bro, knock it off. And I definitely think that's something to discuss. And I think, I don't know. Yeah, I'd say that's something for me. But also, let me ask you this, I guess. Are you angry, you know, at the state of the world right now, at the U.S., you know?
You know, I wish I was angrier.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I consider myself to be incredibly privileged.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they meet a lot of Black Americans, they don't think that. But the life that I've lived and the thing that I've seen in living in Oregon 10 years, most of the white people that I know have not lived or seen the things that I've seen.
Right.
And I think whiteness is a cage, you know, because a lot of white Americans, you know, they might not be racist,
right?
But a lot of they have these racist families a lot of times, not all the time. And it's hard for them to escape that because, you know, if my father was a multimillionaire, it'd be hard for me to not talk to him.
Right.
You know, I don't have those burdens.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody that's actively holding me back. America tries their best, but never, unless I did something to myself, has anybody really been able to stop me from doing anything, you know? So I'm not angry. I'm disappointed.
Sure.
I think not only in white America, but in Black America, I'm disappointed that so many, like I went to New York over winter break, and you'd be surprised how many brothers you see in Timbs and MAGA hats.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, it's a thing. It's a thing, and it's really disheartening. I think the reason I asked that, you brought up James Baldwin, and he has a quote, which I think is, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage all the time. And I think lately I have been feeling that. I have been, you know, because I'll say this, I thought Kamala was going to win.
Me too. I did.
I would, you know, I almost had no doubts. Like, I would have bet on it. And then for Trump to win even the popular vote as well, really kind of blew me away and shook my understanding of what this country was. And I think partially that's because, well, after Trump, we elected Biden. And then it seemed like everybody was kind of on the fuck Trump bandwagon, at least. And this is also the dangers of being in a bubble, right? Like around here, yeah, that's the case. But like clearly that's not the case throughout the entire country. And so I think something I'd want to talk about is, like, for myself and for other young Black, you know, people, how do you deal with that anger? How do you deal with that rage? What do you do with it? Do you organize? Do you what, you know? And I think that's another topic that I would want to discuss, because I have been struggling with that personally. I'm just like, I'm mad. I don't know what to do, you know?
You know, we might have talked about this once, but the first time I ever voted was when George Bush stole that election. And I was mad for a long time. And I remember even when I moved to Oregon, telling my friends, like talking to them about voting and politics, and they were like, I don't vote. Like pretty much everybody said this. And this was like, you know, 10 years ago. And of course now all those people are hyper political and telling me what I need to know. So I think for me what it is just like, I've been telling people this stuff for years, and I'm not the smartest man alive, but I'm just like, you know, I do, you know, I also have 3 dogs. So like my life in general, I'm just surrounded by things that I love. And so that stops me from being angry.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a lot of love in my like bubble, I probably would be angry.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just like, I feel like I said, I think I still consider myself privileged, and I just see, I'm just more disappointed than angry. It's almost like the saying is, what is it? Sometimes you have to laugh to stop from crying.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I am. Like, I just can't be angry anymore because then it's just me being angry. Mm-hmm. Nobody understands what the hell I'm talking about anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Cool, man. Well, this has been great.
Yeah, man. This is the first episode of Black American Spring. We'll be back throughout the week. We should chat and figure out who we want to have on. I feel like there's a couple people that I feel like would be interesting people to bring into this. There's some smart people on this campus.
There's a lot of smart people on this campus.
We could also zoom in. There's all kind of cool stuff we can go. But yeah, we'll see you all. See y'all next time.
Thanks, everyone.